You're gonna want to grab a chair, Sheriff. Sandra's been rammed. That's how it all began. Not the story, no. Just the day. The sun hadn't even cleared the ridge behind my pasture when I called Sheriff Dahlia Flint, half laughing and half concerned, while watching Sandra Powell flail her arms like a puppet tangled in its own strings. From my porch, sipping coffee, I watched as her pointy heels crossed into my barn's open threshold, a barn marked with 3 warning signs, a motion-triggered sprinkler, and a carved wooden plaque that plainly said, "Private Barn. Beware of ram." She read it, squinted at it, then shrugged, muttered something about fixing the rustic eyesore, and strutted in like she owned it. 10 seconds later, she was airborne. You'd think a grown woman would know better than to stroll into a barn on private rural property, especially one protected by a very specific kind of guardian. But not Sandra. Sandra had just moved to Dunridge, a town so small our news still gets posted on a chalkboard outside the general store. She came from a city of valet parking and organic kombucha, dragging along designer luggage, a plastic ficus, and a laundry list of ways she intended to improve the community. She had opinions, and you'd hear them whether you asked or not. The first day she arrived, she asked who the HOA director was. I told her Dunridge didn't have an HOA. Her lips curled like she just bit into a lemon. She told me my barn disrupted the aesthetic of the hillside, my animals looked traumatized, and my scarecrow was too aggressive. I told her that her perfume smelled like an air freshener wrestling match. That set the tone between us. But even I didn't expect her to trespass into my barn on a Tuesday morning, especially not while I was oiling my tractor and listening to classic rock on my old crank radio. That barn wasn't just storage. It was guarded not with cameras or chains, but with Beefcake. Beefcake is a 300-pound Suffolk ram, black-faced, horned, and built like a linebacker with anger issues. Not just a pet. He's a protector. Cranky before breakfast and once expelled from a petting zoo for emotional intimidation. I raised him after he headbutted his own mother at 3 weeks. We had an understanding. I fed him and he kept weirdos out. Sandra sadly qualified. She creaked open the barn doors, stepped onto the hay-covered floor, and froze. Beefcake was already there, dead center, chewing on tarp like it had cursed his family. Their eyes met. Ever seen 2 alphas stare each other down? That eerie moment where neither blinks? Sandra blinked. But instead of retreating, she raised her voice and waved her hands like she was warding off a bee. Bad idea. Beefcake doesn't bluff. He charged. It wasn't a full goring, thank heaven. More of a forceful, expertly aimed body slam at 20 miles an hour. Sandra flew backward out the barn doors and landed in the soft edge of the compost pile. Her shrieking made the crows scatter. That's when I made the call. Sheriff Dahlia rolled up 10 minutes later, aviators on despite the clouds, cruiser tires crunching gravel. She surveyed the scene, Sandra covered in mud and indignation. Beefcake watching from inside the barn with the calm of a samurai who'd won a duel. "Tell me his name isn't really Beefcake," she said. "Would I joke about a majestic creature like that?" Sandra had composed herself enough to start yelling about lawsuits, animal attacks, PTSD, and demanding I be arrested. I offered her a towel. She slapped it away. I offered her a seat. She demanded I be cuffed. Then she pulled out her phone and began recording. "This is going straight to the county board. I'll have your livestock license revoked." "Don't need a license to own a ram," I replied. "This is America." That would have been the end of it, just another Dunridge tale if not for what I found in the barn afterward. While Dahlia tried to reason with Sandra, I stepped inside to calm Beefcake and close the barn doors. That's when I noticed it. A patch of hay near the back looked off. Sunken. Like something had been hurriedly placed beneath it. I grabbed a rake. Beneath a few inches of hay and straw, I struck something solid. I knelt and brushed off the rest. A rusted metal box, about 2 feet wide. No markings. I knew this barn top to bottom. That box hadn't been there a week ago. I glanced at Beefcake, who chewed solemnly and blinked as if to say, "I see nothing." The box felt wrong. Not dangerous. Just wrong. The hinges were old, rusted, but the bottom showed fresh soil. Someone had recently moved it here. Maybe even buried it elsewhere first. And maybe, just maybe, it someone had been Sandra. Her panic hadn't felt entirely about livestock trauma. It felt like fear of getting caught. Fear of discovery. What had she expected to find in my barn? Why was something hidden under the very spot my ram slept? This wasn't just trespassing anymore. 2 days passed. I didn't open the box. I stored it under a tarp behind feed bags and waited. Then Sandra returned, but not alone. She arrived in a spotless white SUV with city rims, striding up to my porch with a man in a blazer tight enough to suggest either vanity or delusion. Her cousin, she said. Gregory. An attorney. He unrolled a map. According to this zoning survey, he said, part of your barn crosses 2 feet onto Sandra's property line. Due to a recent municipal reassessment, she now owns that portion. I blinked. You're trying to annex my barn? Sandra smiled. I believe the community would benefit from converting this barn into a historical site. A cultural landmark. With a cafe and gift shop, Gregory added. Beefcake snorted from inside the barn. I excused myself and slipped back into the barn. The box was still there. I examined the lid again. This time I saw it. An engraving, AV 11993. Later that night, I showed a photo of the box to Sheriff Dahlia. She chewed a strip of jerky thoughtfully. She didn't say a word about this, she muttered. Maybe she was looking for it. You know anyone with those initials? A V? Only person I know involved with Sandra was her ex. Eli Vaughn. Dahlia's eyes narrowed. He's back in town. Saw him this morning at the post office. That night, I sat in the barn, box at my feet, Beefcake beside me. I tried every key I owned. No luck. Even let Beefcake lick the latch. No help. The next morning, Sandra escalated. She filed an injunction to seal the barn pending historical review. No one, not even me or my ram, was allowed inside. Beefcake took it poorly. He sulked. He smashed fence posts. He scared 2 Jehovah's Witnesses into abandoning their bikes. Meanwhile, Sandra walked the town like she'd been crowned queen, talking about cultural renewal, planning guided tours. Then I found the trail. Footprints behind the barn. Through grass. To the creek. A disturbed patch of soil. A comic book bag half buried. Clicked. Comics. The box. Sandra's urgency. Eli's return. That evening, Eli found me on the porch. You opened it? Not yet. What's in it? Things worth money. Comics. Cards. Some. Mistakes. He explained. In the 90s, collectors used comics to launder money. He got swept up in it. Sandra found out. Wanted in. When they divorced, the stash vanished. Now she'd tracked it down. Tried to manipulate a zoning error to claim the barn. I showed him the fake deed with Sandra's initials. He nodded. A dummy. A paper trail cover. The next morning she was back. With a drone. And a film crew. Documenting her future heritage site. I snuck into the barn and, with a grinder, opened the box. Inside, Mint comics. Sealed. Vintage Marvel and DC. Baseball cards. A Nolan Ryan rookie card. And at the bottom, a folder. Clippings. Scans. Documents. Names. Transactions. A fake deed signed by the previous owner and Sandra. Sandra barged in. Give it to me, Eli. You owe me. No, I don't. You laundered comics. You trespassed and forged documents. I stepped in. And filed a fake claim. I've already notified Dahlia. Sandra ran. Literally. Beefcake gave chase. The scream echoed across the pasture. Dust flew. And Sandra hit the dirt. Again. The town buzzed. Sheriff Flint detained her for trespassing and intent to annoy. Her claims collapsed under real paperwork. The clerk confirmed her fake deed. The comics? Worth a fortune. But the folder? Possibly worth indictments. Silas wanted no part in shady dealings. He stayed to clean house. Sandra left town with a moving truck and 0 fanfare. The barn? Still mine. Stronger doors. New hinges. A sign that says, respect the ram. Beefcake? A local hero. Sometimes I sit outside, drink in hand, barn locked, ram asleep. Peace has returned. But whenever someone new asks why the barn's off limits, I tip my hat and say, go ahead. Walk in if you want. Just don't blame me when the ram handles the rest.